Greetings, Lewis, and welcome to another video. Earlier this morning, Pakawat made a very interesting video. Basically, it is a video regarding his thoughts into preparing into the Age of Overlord set and how overwhelming it is coming into it because of deck diversity. I highly encourage you to watch his video before watching this one. The context behind the ideology on that video will be imperative for the information I'm sharing on this one. I will post the video in the description. So if you saw his video, then you already know that he was asking the question to his viewers regarding the laments that it comes with brainstorming into a format like the one we're about to receive. I felt this kind of video warranted my response into a dedicated video because at the end of the day, I am a player who is pursuing educative content, and player perspective is super important when it comes to this TCG. As opposed to Pakawat, I have played the TCG competitively for around 13 years. I have dwelled into many formats. I played open diverse deck formats, trifecta formats, tier 0 formats, just to name a few. However, despite me playing at many different formats and experiencing and learning as many different decks as Pac has, he has done a lot better than I have competitively and has traveled to more events, practiced as diligently as I have, and despite his amount of time playing the game competitively for less time than I have, his critical line of thinking and his performance was warranted for his thought process, and that is something that we have to take into respect. Huge disclaimer, this is not a critique to his video, this is quite the contrary. This is a video format response to his very important question. Because when it comes to preparing for a new set, it doesn't necessarily have to be the deck theory or card choices, but also player insight and comfortability. If you do not feel comfortable with how a format is being played, there's nothing wrong with taking a backseat and let the format play out. Tier 0 formats are one example of this, while many competitive players are inclined into playing mirror matches and adapting to their strategies. Other players take prowess with tech cards, in brainstorming interactions, or finding a strategy that can be a silver bullet for that particular tier 0 deck. We saw that with the Floanderies deck in the past, back when Ishizu format was popular. Without further ado, let's begin. So the first discussion at hand is deck choice. So Pac brought up that there are a lot of decks in there at the moment, and how many of the more popular choices just fold to a lot of strong silver bullet cards. A primary example to what he said is how Tearlament and Unchained are weak to Dweller, while other examples like Purely and Branded are weak to Dimensional Barrier. Vanadium and Infernoble Knights and Floanderies being weak to Draw and Lockbird. Labyrinth and other monotype decks being weak to stuff like There Can Be Only One. And many of the graded decks losing to Dimension Shifter. When it comes to very open formats, or formats that are just starting off a new set, sometimes we're not going to necessarily find the answer right away when that format starts. So for those who are newer to this channel, one of the first deck I built when Photon Hypernova format was just starting was the Lunalight Tearlament deck. I found a way to adapt the strategy besides the absence of Kit Kalos and the limited Tearlament names, and I felt like this deck was really strong at the time. Its non-engine, or its actual engine, was strong against other current decks that just had a slightly lower ceiling than it, or had a similar ceiling. However, after the first month playing the strategy, I realized just how popular and how dominant Kashtira Arise Heart was, and this strategy was not going to be panning out because in a dedicated format where that strategy was going to be very popular, this deck would more likely lose than not, even if we had the correct cards for the matchup, which led me to switch into the Kashtira Scareclaw deck. We played this for approximately 4 to 6 months. This deck was incredibly weak to Droll and Lockbird. However, its Kashtira matchup was very favorable. against many other decks I faced in the format, I just felt it was naturally very, very strong. It didn't lose to Shifter, it didn't lose to Arise Heart, it didn't lose to Dimensional Barrier. And I just naturally felt like it was an ideal pick at the time. And I did very, very significantly well with it. So to answer what the first statement that Pac brought up is, silver bullet cards are sadly a thing that we cannot invade entirely. One of the reasons we stopped playing the Scareclaw deck was because Droll and Logbird rose in popularity when Dune format started. It was mainly because of a contingency plan with the Fear of Vanadium and the Calamity Lock being very popular. However, despite Droll not being as good in the current format that it was happening at the time, it was still a very popular hand trap choice, and our deck was very, very weak to it, which led me to switch to my other deck, which was Vanquish Soul. Vanquish Soul is a strategy that I favored a lot in this past format because it didn't lose to Droll and Logbird, it also didn't lose to Shifter, and it also didn't lose to Dimensional Barrier. And despite it having a lower ceiling than the more popular decks, it had enough room for non-engine to circumvent that. But then we ran into a new problem. And the new problem was Branded Chimera. The matchup was not very favorable for Vanquish Soul. It became a really popular deck during Dune format. And however, with the matchup being unfavorable, what we ended up doing was we kept this Vanquish Soul strategy and just dedicated a lot of spots in the main or side deck into it. Heading into Aghav format, I feel like there are 3 different options that you can take when it comes to tackling this problem that Pac has brought up. I think option number 1 is stick to the if something ain't broke, don't fix it approach. Basically what that means is if your deck or strategy was doing well before Aghav and you've been playing it like super diligently, maybe you can just dedicate like stuff in your main deck to whatever new is coming out of Age of Overlord. Just make your strategy a little bit more adaptive and like try to fight against the weaknesses that the deck has, as well as the weaknesses behind the newer strategies. Then there's option number 2. Option number 2 is called New Toy Syndrome. Basically, you just test the waters, try out all the new cards from the set, and you try to experiment and figure out all the potential interactions that the deck can have with a plethora of matchup. Try to simulate this scenario by testing duels or doing solitaire hands, because at the end of the day, your strategy not only does it have to be fine with the current matchups, but it also has to stay consistent. One example that I'm showcasing here right now is the Tistina strategy. However, this can apply to that Bellstar. This can apply to like Typhon and SP Little Knight. This can apply to like the new Tearlament versions, the new Vanadium versions, like the new Labyrinth card. Like whichever strategy that you're playing with, just try out as many of the new cards as possible, and just try to find something that fits and vibes with you the most, despite like the many grievances that you can find. There's not going to be a perfect deck. There's always going to be like a silver bullet approach. There's always going to be a card that will affect you like in a certain way, but at the end of the day, this is like a fight for all bards in cornered red situation. You can't fight for everything in the format. You can just try your best and predicate towards what you think is popular in your format. And that leads us to option 3. Option 3 is called like countering the trends. What do we mean by that? It's basically what it means is when you pick a deck that or a strategy and you try to pick up on like stuff that people are already doing in the format, and you try to play the most popular counter to what is happening in the strategy, or like is happening in the current format. This is an example. I am testing out Virtual World. The reason for Virtual World is because not only does it get new tools that like really aid the deck, like with the full armor XYZ package. However, Kyuubi Shen is a really strong card against a lot of new cards that are coming into the set. The Bellstar engine does not work well with Shen. Like Forbidden Droplets is a card that a lot of people are playing right now. That card also isn't really good if you like summon Shen. Like the Tear Lament deck and the Rescue Ace deck are two like strategies that are picking up in popularity, and like QB Virtual World Shen is like really strong against like a lot of things that I've been seeing, like currently happening in the format, and like with the new tools that the deck is getting and like stuff that you can adapt to it, like that is like one out of many examples that I can make. This doesn't necessarily have to be Virtual World. This could be like other strategies. You can go back to stuff like Flounderies, which that deck can play Shifter and that deck can play Featherstorm. We already know how strong Shifter is against a lot of stuff that are coming into this next format. If you've been paying attention and seeing like everything involving Age of Overlord. But yeah, at the end of the day, in conclusion, we're heading into a format where it is incredibly hard to predict what can be the perfect deck choice for this next YCS. Unlike YCS Dortmund, where for the most part a lot of people could pick up on the trend that people were gravitating towards. For example, the rise of Tear Laments after a Rise Heart's absence. This one is going to be a format warp. While decks like Unchained, Dragons, Tear Laments will keep their dominant prowess, other strategies like Rescue Ace, Horus Variants, Vanquish Soul, Labyrinth, Chimera, Manadium, just to name a few, are going to be strong options as well. And I wholeheartedly understand where Pack is coming from and how overwhelming it can be when you just feel unsure what your deck choice can be with just so many deck strategies being in the game and so many counters that you just cannot prepare for all of them. My best advice on the matter is just try to pick up the deck you enjoy the most out of your testing. There are a plethora of options that you can try out, and if it ends up not being the correct choice, well, just look what happened to me in Lunar Tournament. But yeah, I hope you found this video very interesting. I hope you found this to your liking. Pack, if you're watching this video, I hope this helped you in some shape or form. I know that you were looking for like see what other people's perspective was on the matter. I felt like this was a video that pretty much warranted its own video in terms of that answer, because at the end of the day, like, it's not a super easy question to answer. It's something that it pretty much just comes to like player perspective more than not. But yeah, welcome to AGO format, where we're literally like 1 week away. I hope you found this video informative. I hope you found this video to your liking and understanding. Keep practicing and keep dueling.